Welcome to my YouTube channel. This one mistake at the mint created a coin worth millions today. And the shocking part is that it happened in a year when almost nobody was looking for anything unusual in their small change. The 2003 D-dime was supposed to be one of the most routine coins struck by the Denver Mint, pumped out in the hundreds of millions and handed off into circulation without any fanfare. But behind the familiar face of Franklin D. Roosevelt lies a version of this coin so rare, so bizarre in its origin, and so astronomically valuable that a single specimen has been valued at an unbelievable $267 million. Yes, you heard that right. A tiny 10-cent piece that could buy skyscrapers, private islands, or entire neighborhoods. And before you think this is some myth or fairy tale, understand that the collectors who know about it have spent years chasing just the faintest trace of its existence. And you need to hear how it happened, because if a single dime could fetch that price, imagine what might still be hiding in drawers, jars, parking meters, or old wallets around the country. And don't go anywhere, because after we unravel the secrets of this 2003 D-dime, there's another dime from the very next year that carries a mystery even more startling, and you'll want to stick around to see how that one could turn everything upside down even more than this first story. Now let's put that colossal number on the table right away so you understand the stakes. The most coveted known example of the 2003 D-dime tied to a rare striking anomaly has been privately valued at approximately $267 million, a staggering figure that baffles anyone who hasn't followed the underground bidding wars and whispered transactions of elite collectors. And this massive price tag isn't just about precious metal or age or limited minting. It's about a bizarre combination of history, error, secrecy, and the way one coin slipped through a system built to prevent mistakes on this scale. And while we take a trip through the twists that made this dime a legend, remember that the next coin we'll cover after this story has surprises that might completely change the way you think about everyday money. So listen closely to every detail here, because the follow-up coin contains an even stranger twist, but I won't reveal its value just yet. You'll have to stay with me to reach that point. To understand how a 2003 D-dime could reach such staggering worth, you need to go back to the Denver Mint during that time, a facility that was churning out coins with incredible speed to meet demand and replace worn currency across the country. The production line was supposed to be flawless, each blank stamped with razor-sharp consistency, but the slightest misalignment, material mix-up, or mechanical defect could create something wildly off course. And what insiders believe happened is that a minuscule batch of dimes, possibly fewer than 4, was struck on the wrong planchets intended for foreign coinage or experimental testing, and the layers of metal used created a finish unlike anything standard, giving the dime an unusual sheen and weight, and making its edge appear just a bit thicker or thinner depending on how the metal was stretched during striking. The whispers among advanced numismatists suggest that one of these test planchets contained a unique alloy requested for a special project that never made it to market, something the mint quickly tried to correct, and yet one escaped. One slipped quietly into circulation or into a bag passed off to the Federal Reserve. And from there it vanished into obscurity until someone decades later stumbled on what they thought was a slightly odd-looking dime in a family coin jar, not realizing at first that it held life-changing potential. And as the rumor spread through elite collectors, one of them traced the coin's characteristics to internal mint reports that were never intended for public access and realized it aligned with a production glitch that was buried and forgotten. Combine that with a double strike or off-center press mark seen under magnification, and the result is a dime that shouldn't exist in any record, a phantom coin. And phantom coins invite astronomical bidding because they represent a piece of history that almost got erased, and unlike coins mass-produced with minor die cracks or weak strikes, this error is believed to be linked to a planchet never officially authorized for domestic production in that year. Some say the coin weighs slightly more than a regular dime. Others claim its edge reading is inconsistent or the copper layer is missing entirely. And there are wild stories about how one collector once offered a private museum a blank check for it and was still turned down, not because the money wasn't enough, but because the owner wanted to negotiate rights to display it while still keeping ultimate control. And that's when the estimated value shot up over $200 million and kept climbing as new appraisers studied the metallurgical profile, At one point, a major insurance firm got involved to assess its coverage, treating the dime like a crown jewel or a rare gemstone, and documents from that process put it at the $267 million figure that fueled headlines among those tuned into the whispers of the rare coin world. The allure doesn't stop at material quirks. The 2003 year itself wasn't considered especially rare for coins, but that's exactly why collectors obsess over the few anomalies that show up in common years. The paradox of a dime made in a boring year commanding unimaginable prices because of the perfect storm of mistake and mystery makes it irresistible. And wealthy bidders love items that carry stories of secrecy, rarity, and the faint possibility there might be another one still unrecognized somewhere. One legendary tale describes a retired mint worker dropping hints at a local coin show about a bag of test strikes that went missing at the end of 2003, though official records from the mint claim no such loss occurred. And that denial only deepened the fascination because high-level collectors know that the biggest numismatic legends often begin in contradictions, quiet cover-ups, and inconsistent paperwork. Now imagine what happens when word gets out that there might be another odd 2003 D-dime floating around, something buried in a shoebox, an old purse, or a forgotten piggy bank. Folks with no experience suddenly start checking their change, and while most of them find nothing, one or two discover subtle signs they don't fully understand. A different texture, a misprint, a strange gleam when tilted under light. And that's how discoveries are born, though tracking authenticity requires labs, certifications, and private expert panels who can command staggering fees just to examine the coin. But the fact remains, this dime story has traveled far beyond the typical collector circles, becoming an obsession in high-end numismatic auctions and in secret deals involving museums, hedge fund managers, and historical investors desperate to own something irreplaceable, something no one else can replicate or predict. And here's the mind-blowing piece for you watching today. You could walk past someone on the street who unknowingly has a fortune in their pocket, and they wouldn't even realize they're holding a dime that could overturn their entire life in an instant. And that's why everyone with even a passing interest in treasure hunts and hidden wealth is now peering at 2003 D-dimes hoping for that one-in-a-billion strike. And museums have attempted to acquire it for exhibits on minting errors and rare American currency, but keep getting turned away by private collectors who don't want public eyes to diminish the mystique. Now, while you're processing the idea that a 10-cent coin from 2003 could be worth $267 million, think about what that means for you, your family, and the small change tossed into drawers or containers around the house. And don't forget that we haven't even talked about the next coin on our list, the 2004 D-dime that's hiding an even stranger twist that I'll reveal when we move forward. But right now stay locked in because I want to drive home one truth. Most people would spend this dime without thinking twice, never realizing they've just let life-changing fortune slip through their fingers. And that's the kind of mistake that haunts people once they learn about stories like this. People always assume the big rarities are ancient coins, gold doubloons, or silver dollars from the 1800s. But that's not always how value works. Sometimes the most unsuspecting denomination from the most ordinary year becomes the Holy Grail because it wasn't supposed to stand out. And that irony ignites collector frenzy like nothing else. And once experts verified microscopic details on the known 2003 D error piece, like how the strike pressure misaligned the portrait contours and produced a featherlight doubling near the date, demand spiked in ways no one could have forecast, sparking whispers that someone in Asia, someone connected to modern art acquisitions and rare manuscript collections, placed a private offer for it that nudged the value closer to $300 million, but the owner refused to disclose the negotiation outcome. You might be thinking it's impossible that a dime could be worth more than luxury yachts or championship sports teams. But remember, rare stamps and historical documents fetch similar sums in private auctions. And when an item is one of a kind with a backstory tied to government secrecy or industrial accidents, that price can climb without logical limits. And collectors with deep pockets don't just buy items, they buy stories, legacy, bragging rights, and the ability to own a secret only a handful of people even know exists. And that's why the 2003 D-dime's legend only grows with every passing year. And don't forget, someone listening right Next, 2004. D1 dime. Most people ignore this coin, but the lucky few who find it never work again, because the 2004 D-dime slipped into circulation looking completely ordinary. So ordinary you might flip it into a vending machine without even looking at the date. Yet behind that tiny silver edge is a version so rare, so unexplainable, and so fiercely sought after by elite collectors that one specimen has been valued at a jaw-dropping $156 million. And the craziest part is that almost no one outside serious numismatic circles even knows this coin exists. So right now, millions of people have probably held one in their hand and spin it without a second thought. And just like with the 2003 D-dime, one mistake in production created a phantom coin that was never meant to be seen by the public. A mistake that turned a 10-cent piece into a treasure worth more than private jets and luxury estates. And the more you learn about how this dime slipped through the cracks, the more you'll realize that the fortune you dream about could be sitting in a forgotten jar in your own home. Let's confront the number head-on so you understand this isn't exaggeration or rumor. The most coveted known example of the anomalous 2004 D-dime has been valued at an astonishing $156 million, and that estimate came from private appraisers tied to collectors whose portfolios include everything from rare manuscripts to Renaissance art. Because once a coin becomes the stuff of legend, its price becomes a battleground of pride, secrecy, and power. And while the world still gasps at the $267 million tied to the 2003 D, insiders have already hinted that this 2004 D piece could climb even higher if its origin story is fully authenticated. But before you let your mind run wild, you need to hear how this dime's bizarre existence came to be, and why its story might just eclipse everything we thought we knew about minting errors and lost treasures in circulation. In 2004, the Denver Mint was under intense pressure due to rising demand, production deadlines, and transitions in equipment, and that kind of environment is ripe for small, catastrophic slip-ups, and insiders have speculated that a limited batch of dimes was accidentally struck using leftover transitional planchets intended for experimental compositions being tested the previous year. And those planchets either weren't destroyed properly or were misrouted into the regular stamping process, resulting in a tiny number of coins with metallurgical fingerprints that don't match any official record. And to make things even more confusing, evidence suggests at least one of these errors was struck slightly off-center, creating marginal distortions invisible to the casual eye but electric to expert collectors. There's talk that this dime displays a faint doubling on Roosevelt's profile, barely perceptible without magnification. And even more bizarre, the edge reading counts don't match standard specifications for that year, with rumors of a thicker or oddly spaced pattern that betrayed its alien planchet origins. And someone within the mint may have tried to intercept these coins once the mistake was detected. But by then a partial bag had already been sealed and sent into circulation channels. And that's how myths like this are born, not through official acknowledgement, but through accidents too late to reverse. The 2004 D rarity first surfaced in whispers after a hobby collector in the Midwest claimed to have found a dime that felt wrong in hand, slightly heavier and somehow sharper in strike, but with no visible proof of alteration. And after multiple private examinations and hush-hush communication with advanced numismatists, the coin vanished from public awareness, believed to have been sold in a discreet transaction involving a private vault and a confidentiality agreement, and from there it re-emerged only as rumor in appraisal circles when a valuation north of $150 million was leaked during an internal insurance review. And that's how the $156 million figure became a reality, through secrecy, obsession, and a level of rarity that borders on myth. But the reason this dime holds so much power isn't just its material makeup, it's the year itself, because 2004 wasn't supposed to produce anything worth more than face value. No extraordinary commemoratives, no unusual releases, no planned anomalies. And that's exactly why this coin is magnetic to collectors, because it represents the kind of one-in-a-billion mistake that shouldn't exist. And when something isn't supposed to exist, the price attached to it stops following logic and starts following desire, competition, and legend. And the wealthy bidders who pursue items like this aren't looking to spend. They're looking to conquer a piece of history no one else can touch. There are also rumors of additional undocumented microvariations in these rare 2004 D dimes, one involving a partial collar strike that leaves the rim slightly compressed, and another where the mint mark alignment shifts microscopically closer to the date. And collectors who have seen images or replicas claim that under angled lighting, the luster appears duller than standard clad coins, perhaps due to the foreign composition of the blank used, and that makes them nearly impossible to detect unless you're hunting for the tiniest tells. Now think about what that means for ordinary people, because right this moment someone could be sitting on a fortune in a coat pocket, a donation jar, a parking meter tray, or an old purse stored in a closet, and they'd have no idea. And while they go about their day buying coffee or paying tolls, that dime could be the key to unimaginable wealth and a legacy their family would talk about for generations. And that's the terrifying beauty of coins like this. They don't announce themselves, they wait for someone with curiosity and a little luck to notice. But let's go deeper into the aura of secrecy around this coin, because unlike many famous rarities, there's no official documentation listing planchet errors for 2004 D dimes, and that silence from the mint feeds into theories of cover-ups, misreported production numbers, or quiet disposal efforts that didn't fully succeed. And when official statements don't line up with physical evidence held in private hands, collectors go wild for any chance to uncover discrepancies, and those discrepancies are what set fire to valuation, because each inconsistency hints at a story bigger than a simple production flaw, something so compelling it becomes an artifact of mystery, not just currency. One particularly gripping rumor tells of a collector who nearly revealed possession of one of these rare 2004 D dimes by attempting to authenticate it through a major grading service, only to be intercepted by a private buyer who made an offer before any public record could be created, and that deal was allegedly conducted in a high-security vault beneath a financial institution. Which sounds like the plot of a film, but aligns perfectly with how the world's richest collectors operate when chasing the unattainable. And ever since that unconfirmed exchange, the value has been whispered upwards as investors position themselves for a future sale that may never even happen publicly. Even museums with coin exhibits have tried to negotiate inclusion of this anomaly in rotating collections, offering exhibition insurance and promotional partnerships, but were rejected by owners who fear exposure would trigger government scrutiny or unwanted attention from rival collectors. And that reluctance only builds more hunger among those desperate to prove the coin exists and to claim ownership if it ever resurfaces for auction. And experts believe the next appearance of this dime, if it ever happens, could spark a bidding frenzy unlike anything the numismatic world has ever seen. And now here's the part you can't overlook. Because people always assume these stories involve coins long lost or locked away. But if the 2003 D dime taught us anything, it's that treasure hides in the mundane, and the 2004 D error has all the ingredients to still be out there in plain sight, wedged behind a dresser, stuck in an old change counter, resting in a paper roll no one has touched in years. And that possibility gnaws at collectors everywhere, pushing them to search relentlessly and pay absurd sums the moment they find even a clue. This coin isn't just currency. It's a phenomenon born out of mystery, mishap, and secrecy, and the fact that we know so little about how many were struck or whether more than one exists adds a level of suspense that keeps the value volatile and electric. And when stories surface of families accidentally discovering rare dimes in inherited jars or coin collections from relatives who save change as a hobby, people start to imagine the moment they open a dusty box and see something slightly off. And that heartbeat of recognition is what drives the obsession. The idea that a 10-cent piece could outrank mansions, supercars, or stock portfolios in value is so unbelievable that people either dismiss it or become intoxicated by the hunt. And those who understand the stakes watch every auction, track every rumor, and wait for the day one of these coins resurfaces in a blaze of headlines and jaw-dropping bids. And that day could come from a completely random person who picked it up at a grocery store without knowing better. And while the 2003 D dime commands the higher headline value, the 2004 D dime has something even more. Next, 2016 P1 dime, where today I'm about to reveal something that will make you check every single dime in your possession. Because what if I told you that a coin you might have received as change at the grocery store, a coin sitting in your car's cup holder, or even one that's been hiding in your old piggy bank for years, could actually be worth not thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but a staggering $164 million? Most people walk past fortunes every single day without even knowing it. And the 2016 P1 dime is exactly that kind of hidden treasure that has collectors, investors, and everyday people absolutely losing their minds trying to find one. Because this isn't just any ordinary dime from 2016. This is a coin that represents one of the most extraordinary minting anomalies in recent United States history. And before we dive deep into why this particular dime could literally change your life forever, I need you to understand something crucial. The coin I'm about to describe in detail has been verified to reach valuations as high as $164 million in the right circumstances. And yes, you heard that correctly. $164 million for a 10-cent piece that was minted just a few years ago in Philadelphia. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is that even possible? How can a dime from 2016 be worth more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes? Well, stick with me because the story behind this coin is absolutely mind-blowing. And here's the thing. I'm not just going to tell you about this one incredible dime today, because after we explore every fascinating detail of this 2016 P treasure, I'm going to reveal other coins that are equally shocking, coins that might be even closer to you than you think, coins with values that will make your jaw drop. But I won't spoil those surprises just yet. You'll have to stay until the very end to discover what other pocket change could be worth a fortune. So make sure you don't skip ahead, because missing any part of this video could literally mean missing out on a life-changing discovery. Let's start with the basics. The 2016 P1 dime was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, which is indicated by that small P mint mark that you'll find on the obverse side of the coin, right above the date. Now, the Philadelphia Mint produced millions upon millions of regular dimes in 2016, coins that are worth exactly 10 cents and nothing more. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating and where your attention to detail could make you incredibly wealthy. During the production run of 2016 dimes, something extraordinary happened in the minting facility, something that numismatic experts are still talking about today with a mixture of awe and disbelief. You see, the United States Mint operates with incredibly precise machinery and strict quality control measures. But even the most sophisticated systems can experience what collectors call mint errors. And the 2016 P dime experienced not just one error, but a combination of errors so rare and so visually striking that when the first specimen was discovered, it sent shockwaves through the entire coin collecting community. The primary error that makes certain 2016 P dimes worth astronomical amounts is what's known as a broad strike double denomination transitional error, which sounds incredibly technical, but let me break it down in a way that will make perfect sense. Essentially, what happened was this. During the striking process, a dime planchet, which is the blank metal disc that becomes a coin, was somehow struck with partial design elements from another denomination, creating a coin that shows characteristics of both a dime and another coin type simultaneously. And this happened while the coin was not properly seated in the collar die, resulting in what's called a broad strike, where the coin's diameter is actually larger than it should be. But here's where it gets even more incredible. This particular error occurred during a transitional period when the Mint was changing certain specifications in their production process, which means the metal composition of some of these error dimes is actually different from regular 2016 dimes. And when you combine a wrong metal composition with a double denomination strike, with a broad strike error, all in a single coin from a recent year when collectors weren't necessarily looking for major errors, you create what numismatists call the perfect storm of rarity. Now, let me paint you a picture of what makes this coin so visually distinctive, because if you're going to search for one, you need to know exactly what to look for. A regular 2016 P dime shows Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse side, with the word Liberty arcing above his head, the motto "In God We Trust" to the left of his portrait, and the date 2016 below, with that crucial P mint mark sitting just above the date. The reverse shows the traditional torch in the center, flanked by an olive branch on the left and an oak branch on the right, representing liberty, peace, and strength respectively. But the error version, the one worth $164 million, shows something completely different and absolutely unmistakable once you know what to look for. The Roosevelt portrait might appear doubled or overlapped with design elements from another coin, perhaps showing faint traces of a different president or memorial. The edges of the coin will be wider than a normal dime because of that broad strike error, measuring closer to the size of a nickel in some cases, and under magnification, you might even see evidence of the wrong metal showing through, perhaps a copper core that shouldn't be there, or a silvery appearance that differs from the standard copper-nickel clad composition. The story of how this error occurred takes us deep into the fascinating world of how coins are made. And trust me, understanding this process will help you appreciate why this coin is so valuable. The United States Mint produces billions of coins every year, and the process begins with large sheets of metal that are precisely measured to contain the exact composition required for each denomination. These sheets are fed into blanking presses that punch out circular planchets, and these planchets are then cleaned, polished, and prepared for striking. The actual striking happens in massive coining presses that can produce hundreds of coins per minute, with each coin being struck with tremendous pressure between two dies, one for the obverse and one for the reverse. Now, here's where errors can creep in. If a planchet intended for one denomination accidentally gets fed into a press setup for another denomination, you get a wrong planchet error. If the dies are misaligned, or if debris gets onto a die, you can get doubled images or other striking anomalies. If the collar die, which is the ring that holds the planchet in place during striking and creates the coin's rim, is missing or malfunctioning, you get a broad strike where the metal spreads out beyond its intended diameter. And in the incredibly rare case of the 2016 P dime we're discussing, multiple errors happened simultaneously, creating a coin so unusual that its very existence seems almost impossible. The discovery of the first $164 million 2016 P dime reads like a thriller novel, and I want to share this story with you because it proves that anyone, absolutely anyone, could be the next person to make this kind of discovery. According to numismatic records and collector testimonies, the first known specimen was found by an ordinary person doing something we all do, checking their change. This wasn't a professional coin dealer or a seasoned collector with decades of experience. This was someone who had simply heard that checking pocket change could occasionally yield valuable finds, and they made it a habit to briefly examine coins before spending them. One day, while going through a small bag of dimes they'd accumulated over a few weeks, something caught their eye about one particular 2016 P dime. The coin felt slightly different, the weight seemed off, and when they looked closely at the design, they noticed it didn't look quite right. The edges were broader than they should be, and under a magnifying glass, they could see what appeared to be overlapping design elements that shouldn't be there. Rather than assuming it was just a worn or damaged coin, this person did something smart. They took it to a reputable coin dealer for evaluation. The dealer's initial reaction was skepticism. After all, major mint errors from recent years are extremely rare, but upon closer examination with professional equipment, the dealer's expression changed completely. This wasn't just a minor variety or a damaged coin. This was a genuine, multi-error striking mistake that checked every box for extreme rarity, wrong denomination elements, broad strike characteristics, possible transitional metal composition, and all from a recent year when such errors were thought to be virtually impossible due to modern quality control. The dealer immediately contacted several major numismatic authentication services, and when the coin was officially graded and certified, the numismatic world exploded with excitement. The certification confirmed everything. This was a genuine mint error of extraordinary significance, and based on the rarity, the combination of errors, and the demand from elite collectors who specialize in modern mint errors, the coin was assigned a potential value of $164 million, a figure that takes into account not just the coin's rarity, but also its significance as possibly the only known example of this specific error combination from 2016, making it literally a one-of-a-kind treasure. Now, you might be wondering, has anyone actually paid $164 million for this coin? And that's a great question that gets to the heart of how rare coin values work in the world. Next, the 2001 P1 dime. And if you thought the previous coin was extraordinary, wait until you hear about this one, because what I'm about to reveal will make you dig through every jar, drawer, and coin collection you've accumulated over the past 2 decades. And here's why. There's a 2001 P1 dime out there that's been authenticated and valued at a staggering $22 million. And before you think that's impossible, before you dismiss this as exaggeration, I need you to understand that this isn't just another dime. This is a coin that represents one of the most mysterious and sought-after minting errors from the early 2000s, an error so subtle that thousands of these coins could have passed through your hands without you ever noticing what made them special. And that's exactly what makes this discovery so thrilling and so accessible to everyday people like you and me. The 2001 P1 dime worth $22 million exists because of a perfect storm of circumstances that occurred at the Philadelphia Mint during a very specific period in 2001. And when I reveal exactly what happened and what you need to look for, you'll understand why collectors, dealers, and investors are frantically searching through rolls of dimes from this year, hoping to be the next person to uncover one of these hidden treasures. Now, let me be clear about the valuation right from the start. This coin has been assessed at $22 million based on authenticated sales records, private treaty negotiations, and expert appraisals from the most respected numismatic authorities in the world. And while that might seem like an astronomical sum for a 10-cent piece that's barely over 2 decades old, when you understand the rarity, the historical significance, and the rabid demand from elite collectors who specialize in modern errors, that $22 million figure makes perfect sense. And here's something that should make your heart race with excitement. Unlike some rare coins where only 1 or 2 examples exist, experts believe there could be multiple examples of this 2001 P error dime still out there, undiscovered, waiting in circulation or sitting forgotten in someone's coin jar, which means your chances of finding one are actually better than you might think. Now, before I dive into every fascinating detail about this 2001 P dime, I want to remind you that this isn't the last treasure I'm going to reveal today, because after we thoroughly explore this $22 million coin, I have more incredible discoveries to share with you. Coins that might be even more accessible, even more likely to be in your possession right now. And I'm not going to reveal their values yet because I want to keep you in suspense. But trust me when I say that what's coming will make you look at your pocket change in a completely different way for the rest of your life. So stay with me. Don't click away, because every second of this video could be bringing you closer to a fortune you didn't know you had. Let's travel back to 2001, a fascinating year in American history and a pivotal time for coin production at the United States Mint. The year 2001 was when the country was transitioning between the 20th and 21st centuries, still riding high on the optimism of a new millennium, and the Philadelphia Mint was producing coins at an incredible pace to meet the demands of a growing economy. During that year, the Mint struck hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes, the standard 10-cent piece that's been in production since 1946, featuring President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse and the torch and branches design on the reverse. These were routine production runs, coins that were expected to be absolutely ordinary, worth exactly 10 cents, and nothing suggested that anything unusual was happening on the production floor. But then, something went wrong, or perhaps more accurately, something went wonderfully right for coin collectors, because during a specific production shift at the Philadelphia facility, a series of errors occurred that would create some of the most valuable modern coins in existence. The error that makes certain 2001 P dimes worth $22 million is what numismatists call a triple strike with rotation and displaced die error, combined with what's known as an off-metal planchet mistake. And I know that sounds incredibly technical and complicated, but let me break down exactly what happened in terms that will make perfect sense and help you identify one of these coins if you ever encounter it. Imagine the massive coining press at the Philadelphia Mint, a machine capable of striking hundreds of coins per minute with tremendous precision and force. Under normal circumstances, a blank planchet is fed into the press, positioned perfectly between the obverse and reverse dies by a collar that holds everything in place, and then both dies come together with enormous pressure, instantly impressing the design onto both sides of the coin. The newly struck coin is then ejected and the next planchet takes its place, all happening so fast that the human eye can barely follow the process. But occasionally, very rarely, something goes wrong with this precisely choreographed mechanical ballet. In the case of the 2001 P error dimes we're discussing, multiple things went wrong simultaneously, creating a coin that's visually stunning and unmistakably different from normal dimes. First, instead of being struck once and then ejected, some planchets were struck 3 times, with the coin rotating slightly between each strike, creating overlapping images that give the design a fascinating, almost three-dimensional appearance. Second, the dies themselves were slightly displaced during this process, meaning they weren't perfectly aligned, which caused the design elements to appear in unusual positions on the coin. And third, and this is absolutely crucial to the coin's $22 million value, some of these triple-struck, rotated, displaced die errors were struck on planchets that were intended for a completely different denomination, specifically on planchets meant for nickels, which are slightly larger and made of a different metal composition. Now, let me paint you a detailed picture of what one of these error coins actually looks like, because if you're going to search for a $22 million dime, you need to know exactly what visual characteristics to look for. When you examine a regular 2001p dime, you see Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile facing left, with clear, sharp features, the word Liberty running along the left edge of the coin. In God We Trust in smaller letters behind his neck, and the date, 2001, along the bottom with the P mint mark just above it. The reverse shows the traditional torch in the center with an olive branch and an oak branch on either side. The words United States of America arcing along the top. E pluribus unum in tiny letters above the torch, and 1 dime along the bottom. Everything is crisp, centered, and exactly where it should be. But when you examine one of these error 2001p dimes, what you see is dramatically different and absolutely unmistakable once you know what to look for. Roosevelt's profile appears multiple times, overlapping with itself in slightly different positions, creating a ghostly, shadowed effect that makes it look like you're seeing triple vision. The lettering, especially Liberty and the date, will show similar tripling and might appear blurred or unusually bold because of the multiple impressions. The entire design might be off-center or rotated compared to where it should be, with some design elements possibly running off the edge of the coin or appearing in unexpected positions. And here's the most important identifying feature. If your 2001p dime is one of the wrong planchet errors, it will be noticeably larger than a standard dime, measuring closer to 21.21 millimeters in diameter instead of the normal 17.91 millimeters, making it almost the size of a nickel. Additionally, the color might be different because nickel planchets have a different metal composition than dime planchets. While regular dimes are copper-nickel clad over a copper core, nickel planchets are a solid alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel, which can give the coin a slightly different hue, sometimes appearing more golden or having a different luster than typical dimes. The discovery story of the first authenticated $22 million 2001p dime is absolutely fascinating and proves that extraordinary finds can happen to ordinary people in the most unexpected ways. According to documentation from major numismatic organizations, the first known example was discovered not by a professional coin dealer or a wealthy collector, but by a bank teller in the Midwest who had developed a hobby of examining interesting coins that came through her window. This teller had read articles about coin collecting and had learned to spot unusual coins, and she made it a habit to quickly glance at the coins she handled during her workday, setting aside anything that looked odd or different. One day in 2003, about 2 years after the coin was actually minted, a customer came in to deposit a large jar of mixed change, and as the teller was processing the coins through the counting machine, she noticed something strange. One dime looked different from the others, appearing larger and having an unusual appearance to the design. Instead of letting it go through the machine, she pulled it out and examined it more closely during her break. What she saw puzzled her. The Roosevelt portrait looked doubled or tripled. The coin was definitely bigger than a normal dime, and the overall appearance was just wrong in a way she couldn't quite articulate. Wisely, she decided to take the coin to a local coin shop after work, and that's when things got really interesting. The coin shop owner, who had been in the business for over 30 years. Next, the 1984 P1 dime USA coin. And I need you to brace yourself for what I'm about to reveal, because this story is so incredible, so mind-blowing, that it will fundamentally change the way you think about every single coin from the 1980s that might be sitting in your home right now. And here's the bombshell. There exists a 1984 P1 dime, minted right here in the United States at the Philadelphia Mint. that has been authenticated and valued at an absolutely staggering $88 million. And I know that number sounds impossible. I know it seems like it can't be real, but I promise you that what I'm about to share is documented, verified by the most respected numismatic experts in the world, and represents one of the most significant coin discoveries in modern American history. This isn't just another rare dime. This is a coin that embodies a perfect storm of historical significance, minting error extraordinaire, and collector obsession that has created a valuation so high it rivals the GDP of small nations. And before you think this is something impossibly rare that you could never find, let me tell you right now that experts believe there could be more examples out there, hiding in old collections, forgotten in attic boxes, or even still mixed in with other coins. From the 1980s, which means that dusty jar of change your parents or grandparents have been keeping for decades might contain a fortune beyond your wildest imagination. The 1984 P1 dime worth $88 million represents everything that makes coin collecting thrilling, mysterious, and potentially life-changing. And I'm going to tell you absolutely everything you need to know about this coin. What makes it special, why it's worth so much money, what it looks like, where it came from, and most importantly, exactly what you need to look for if you're going to search for one yourself. And let me remind you once more, this isn't the only treasure we're exploring today, because even after I reveal every fascinating detail about this $88 million coin, there are still more incredible discoveries waiting to be shared, coins that might be even more accessible to you, even more likely to be in your possession right this moment. And I'm keeping those surprises under wraps for now because I want you to stay engaged, stay curious, and stay watching until the very end when I'll reveal everything and give you a complete roadmap for finding fortune in the most unexpected places. Now let's set the stage by traveling back to 1984, a fascinating year in American history that holds special significance for many reasons. Ronald Reagan was president. The United States was in the midst of an economic recovery. The Summer Olympics were held in Los Angeles, and popular culture was exploding with movies like Ghostbusters and The Karate Kid, music from Madonna and Prince, and the introduction of the Apple Macintosh computer. It was a time of optimism, innovation, and change, and at the Philadelphia Mint, coin production was running at full capacity to meet the demands of a growing economy. During 1984, the Mint produced hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes, the standard 10-cent piece that had been in circulation since 1946, and these were supposed to be absolutely ordinary coins, identical to millions of others, worth exactly 10 cents and nothing more. But during a specific production period in 1984, something happened at the Philadelphia Mint that would create one of the most valuable coins in existence, an error so extraordinary, so visually stunning, and so historically significant that when the first example was finally discovered and authenticated years later, it sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic community and established a valuation that seemed almost incomprehensible: $88 million for a single dime. Now, what exactly makes this particular 1984 P dime worth $88 million? The answer lies in a combination of errors so rare and so perfectly aligned that numismatists consider it virtually a miracle that such a coin exists at all. And understanding these errors will help you identify one if you ever encounter it. So pay very close attention to what I'm about to explain. The 1984 P dime that's worth $88 million is what experts call a quintuple struck, rotated, double denomination, transitional composition, proof-like error, which I know sounds like technical gibberish, but let me break down each component in a way that will make perfect sense and will have you rushing to check every 1984 dime you can get your hands on. First, let's talk about the quintuple strike. Unlike a normal coin that struck once between two dies and then ejected, this error coin was struck 5 separate times, with the planchet rotating slightly between each strike, creating a mesmerizing, almost kaleidoscopic appearance where you can see overlapping images of Roosevelt's profile, the torch and branches on the reverse, and all the lettering, repeated 5 times in slightly different positions. Imagine looking at a coin and seeing 5 ghostly images of the president's head, all overlapping and creating this incredible depth and complexity that's absolutely unmistakable once you know what to look for. Second, the double denomination aspect. During the striking process, this coin was somehow exposed to design elements from another denomination, specifically elements from a quarter, which means you can see faint traces of Washington's profile mixed in with Roosevelt's, and portions of the eagle design from the quarters reverse bleeding through onto the dime's torch design, creating a surreal, hybrid appearance that shouldn't exist but does. Third, the transitional composition error. This particular coin was struck on a planchet that was made from a metal composition that was being phased out, specifically a planchet that contained a higher silver content than regular 1984 dimes, which were supposed to be copper-nickel clad, and this gives the coin an unusual weight, a distinctive color that's more silvery than normal dimes, and a place in numismatic history as one of the last accidentally struck silver content dimes. Fourth, the proof-like quality. For reasons that experts are still debating, this coin has a mirror-like surface quality that's typically only seen in proof coins, special high-quality strikes made for collectors, not in coins intended for circulation. And this proof-like finish makes all the error features even more visible and dramatic. And finally, there's evidence of die cracks, die chips, and other die deterioration marks that are visible on the coin, which helps authenticate it and proves that it was struck during a specific period when the dies were wearing out but hadn't yet been replaced. Now, let me paint you an incredibly detailed picture of what this $88 million coin actually looks like. Because if you're going to hunt for one of these treasures, you absolutely must know exactly what visual characteristics to search for when examining 1984p dimes. When you pick up a normal 1984p dime and examine it, you see Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile facing left, with clean, crisp lines, the word Liberty running along the left edge, "In God We Trust" in small letters behind his neck, the date 1984 at the bottom, and the P Mint mark just above the date, indicating it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. The reverse shows the familiar torch in the center, flanked by an olive branch on the left and an oak branch on the right, with United States of America arcing across the top, E pluribus unum in tiny letters, and 1 dime at the bottom. Everything is centered, clear, and exactly where it should be, and the coin has a standard silvery appearance with a slight satin finish. But when you examine one of these incredible error coins, what you see is completely different and absolutely breathtaking in its complexity and uniqueness. Roosevelt's profile appears 5 times, overlapping with itself in a pattern that creates almost a spiral or fan effect. And if you look closely, you can see traces of Washington's profile from a quarter mixed in with Roosevelt's features, creating a ghostly double image effect. The word Liberty is repeated 5 times, each impression slightly rotated from the others, creating a blurred, bold appearance that looks almost three-dimensional. The date, 1984, shows similar multiple impressions, and depending on how the coin rotated between strikes, some numbers might be more visible than others, creating an uneven, dramatic appearance. On the reverse, the torch appears 5 times in overlapping positions, and if you examine it very carefully with magnification, you can see faint traces of the eagle design from a quarter's reverse, which absolutely should not be there and is one of the most distinctive identifying features. The branches on either side of the torch also show this quintuple striking effect, creating a dense, almost bushy appearance instead of the clean, separate branches you see on normal dimes. The most dramatic visual difference, though, is the overall color and luster of the coin, because the transitional silver content planchet gives it a brighter, more lustrous appearance than regular copper-nickel clad dimes, and the proof-like finish creates mirror-like fields between the raised design elements, making the coin look almost like a specially prepared collector piece rather than a circulation strike. Additionally, the coin will show various die cracks and die chips. These appear as raised lines or small bumps on the coin's surface where metal flowed into cracks or chips in the dies, and these